Now what would I benefit by getting rid of Jimmy?
You come down here from Green's Pond and accuse me of making away with Jimmy? You're trying to tarnish my good reputation in this town.
I'm just a frail old woman, and you think I had something to do with getting rid of Jimmy?
Yes, now. Attack him with my scissors, I suppose. What would I have to get rid of Jimmy for?
Why? Because the man didn't like me? Heard he told you that half the town don't like me and fodder. No one else has gone missing, I suppose?
Yes, boy. Me getting rid of Jimmy Jenkins. What cars? I won't even speak to the man.
I am happy here in Callit Harbour. You think I would jeopardize that because of Jimmy?
That's my dad.
You think I killed my husband?
What was my relationship like with Jimmy? Well, anyone in town can tell you that that man is by no means a saint. He was hard to get along with? Absolutely, and no one in town is going to deny you there. But let's see, I must have met him about 10 years ago. He was driving the bus up in Greens Pond. Every morning he'd drive about 20 minutes and pick up the kids and then bring them all the way over to school and then go home again. Only until later that day he'd have to go back and pick up all the kids from school, bring them all to their houses and then go home himself. It took a toll on him. He ended up quitting that job shortly after, and he got a job actually up at the plant. That's when I met him. I know I said he didn't work at the plant before, but that's because I had to fire him. You see, he was a great worker at first. He was always on time, always prepared for his work, and I think he always got his job done in the run of a day. But after a while, after the summer, something just clicked in him. He was never on time, calling in sick for shifts all the time, and I'd see him walk down the road. Like, who does that? Anyways, then I found out that he started taking products just straight off the skids. At first it was 1 packages, and then it got up to 2, and those packs can get up to $300 or $400. That's up to $800 every shift. So I did what anyone would have to do, and I let him go. We ended up mending bridges after that. It took a few years, but then last year, I believe it was, he started coming to the plant again and helping the boys unload their fishing boats. But then, let's just say, product started going missing again, and last I heard he was selling product into Greens Pond. Stealing product and making a living out of it. A little Robin Hood, if you will.
I've known Jimmy for years. What? Someone asked about the car we were towing? Well, I mean, you see, what happened there was Aunt Myrtle stopped up to the store the other day. I never puts her on the schedule, so some days she just shows up and wants to work. So this day I let her. As I was driving home, nice June day, windows down on my car, here's this racket. Can't understand a word. Figures Frida's yelling at her son again because he's always getting into trouble, and when Frida starts yelling in Spanish, you know she's angry. As I'm driving by, I see that she's yelling at Jimmy. She's screaming something about how she wants someone who actually knows how to fix a car. She never really liked him, even with all the rumors going around. Anyway, pulls over to try and defuse the situation, and at the same time, Patty's pulling into the driveway. See, Frida has a new car. Something happened to the brakes. She panicked because her husband's out at sea and the car was brand new. So she called Patty. He came with the tow truck to take her car down to the garage. Turns out there was nothing wrong with the brakes. She just had to reset the sensor on the dash or something. But Jimmy didn't help the whole situation by trying to climb up in under her car. He didn't even assess it. I bet poor Aunt Bernie mentioned that to you. When I was helping Patty tow the car, I saw her looking out the window. Poor old woman, watching everyone gives her some sort of purpose. Anyway, back to how I met Jimmy. Used to drive the bus route up in Greens Pond. I'd say he was about 20 or so when he first started that bus run. My father owned a stop and gas then. Used to work there as a manager. Like I said, he handed over the business to me because I've basically been running it for years anyway. I'm sure my kids will take over when I get old. Anyway, every day that Jimmy would head up to Greens Pond, he'd stop in here, fill up his bus with gas, buy his morning coffee, and warm breakfast sandwiches that we have to offer. That was literally every morning for what? 2 years? I can't remember how long Jimmy was driving that bus. We used to make fun and say he was only doing it because he had a thing for Grey Hazel Parsons. Yeah. And, she was still in high school, so he started driving her bus route to see her every day. Then they ended up getting married. Soon after that, he gave out the bus route and started working at the plant. Plant is a much harder job, so why a man like Jimmy would do such a thing beats me. Anyway, he stopped in here every night to get his coffee, worked mainly overnight shifts. Soon, gossip went around that he was selling crab's legs up in Greens Pond. Now, where the hell was Jimmy getting crab's legs if not at the plant? It was around that time that the doctor told Jimmy he had to lay off the caffeine and alcohol. Well, everyone who knows Jimmy knows he's not giving up his booze, so he used to ask me to brew him decaf every night, till he got fired from the plant. Then I would switch the decaf to the morning, because Jimmy started showing up mornings with nothing better to do and his time. Anyway, he started running up a tab here, always saying he'd pay next time. I mean, how many times could I write down a $50 gas order with a few knickknacks he gave me? His bill grew bigger and bigger, and see, I know you're not doubting it, but I tries my hardest to be a good man. I didn't have the heart to say, Jimmy, you can't put anything else on your bill. But it really was taking a toll on business. So I'm shocked he never got the chance to get his life back on track.
Oh, well, Jimmy's family was probably the first family that Maxwell and I had the pleasure of being friends with here in Callit. Oh, his mother, Sarah Jenkins, was around my age, and she worked as a PCA. I was working up in the clinic as an office administrator at the time. I'd see Sarah every once in a while when she'd bring in some of her clients for their checkups and whatnot. While the doctors were consulting with their patients, Sarah and I would have a laugh, talking about this one and that one. Oh, like that one time that one teacher up in Greens Pond got fired. She up and spanked a kid right in the class. Oh, different times back then, and the ruler was the way of punishment sometimes, but, for whatever reason, this parent got angry. I wonder what happened to that teacher. Anyways, we became close friends, so when Jimmy was born, Sarah and Gerald made me the godmother. Now here I am, born a Pentecost, so I know about as much as being a godmother as my cat there under the table. But I accepted anyways, because I thought it was just the nicest gesture. Growing up, Jimmy was always the most polite boy. We thought he would go far in life. After he married Hazel, though, and started working up there for Gar, it was like something switched. He became a drunk. Anyway, I stopped having anything to do with him after Maxwell's funeral. I'm not one to hold a grudge, but how that man treated Maxwell in his last days? Not right, I says, not right.
So yeah, you noticed that, did ya? I find it pretty strange myself. Here I'm saying Jimmy never comes here, and yet I also said that he booked an appointment for yesterday that he missed. But anyway, yes, I've known Jimmy for quite a while now. I'd say I was in junior high when he was in high school. See, the schools down in Greens Pond, they don't work the same as most. You got your primary elementary school from K to 6, and then you got your junior high school from 7 to 12. I was in the junior high wing, and I'd see Jimmy around quite a lot. No word of a lie, he was kind of popular back then. Anyway, when I got out of high school and I decided to go to Keene, Jimmy decided to tell people that I was pursuing him. Here he was, a married man with a young child, saying that I was pursuing him. What? Someone made a comment about me and Jimmy dating. I tell you, I've had my fair share of dates, and Jimmy Jenkins is the farthest away on my radar. Listen, I tell you, say there's 100 men in Callit. Jimmy Jenkins would be my 200th pick. I'd go through all the men twice before I ever think about dating Jimmy Jenkins. Anyway, ever since that day, I haven't had time for the men. When I came back to Callit, though, everyone was catching me up on the gossip about Jimmy. One thing after another with that man. When I open up my salon here, All the women were so excited. Finally, they didn't have to drive in over the road to Greenspan anymore to get their hair done. Soon after, all the men were getting their hair cut here. I pretty much have Gar White to thank for that. He started coming here and everyone started saying, oh, the man with all the money comes in here, comes go get a haircut with Sharon, oh, I should go there too. You'd think he had celebrity status here, honestly. Jimmy was coming to me for a while though before Gar. It's like he had some kind of ego complex. As soon as Gar started coming here and toning the crowd, Jimmy started to rake my name through the mud. It's like he wanted to be better than Gar, but everyone in these parts follows Gar. So maybe he was trying to hurt me? I don't know. No one could figure out that man. Anyway, he started going up to Greenspan again to get his hair cut up there. God knows how he could afford the gas money for it. Maybe it was because he was picking up all them cans in the ditches and giving them to recycling. Oh, the best one though? He literally shaved a chunk of his hair off his head and posted it on Facebook, saying that it was a cut that I gave him and he had to go to Greenspan to get it fixed. Anyway, 2 days ago I get a call from Jimmy saying he wants to book an appointment. I haven't heard from the man since the Facebook fiasco, and I haven't heard from him since he booked the appointment.
I've known Jimmy for a while now. Not sure how long. Maybe since like elementary school when the older kids would tease Vicky. A lot of the kids my age would tease her, even though she was a couple years younger than us. But it always dealt with her dad. They'd always tell her that her dad was a drunk, that she was a puppy dog. I remember kids used to literally say, "Oh no, Daddy let his puppy off the leash. Hurry home before the dog catcher gets you." Wasn't right, you know. Like, I'm not about that lifestyle. Live and let live, I says, but Jimmy, oh, he was a handful. So around the time I was in grade 10, I started dating Vicky. Apparently there was something wrong with someone in high school wing dating someone in the junior high wing. Dude, you're a bus driver that dated one of your passengers. Anyway, he loved to take out his anger on me. Every time I'd go over to Vicky's to hang out, he'd always hover, saying, "Vicky don't need you in her life, and Vicky would succeed so much better if you weren't around. And with you around, Vicky will find fame on that show about teen moms." So needless to say, he hated me. But I felt bad for Vicky. She always had to sit there and listen to it. I'd call it abuse if you ask me. So we stopped hanging out at her house, which is when people started saying that she only used me for my car. No, we hang out in my car to get away from her dad. Not once has she ever asked me to drive her here or there. I also think Jimmy was a bit jealous. He couldn't hold down a job, and here I was with a grade 10 education, making all this money on my dad's boat and gearing up to take it over. I think he resented the fact that I could basically do a better job at taking care of Vicky than he could. That drove him nuts. He always wants to be the best, to be the star. I was in the running at beating him at his own game. He couldn't stand that.
Me and Jimmy grew up in Callit Harbour together. That's right. I don't know if anyone told you this, but we were about 10 or so. We both got new bikes. We were going to start a biker gang here in Callit. Always up to something we were. Now, something changed when Jimmy started taking the bus route, right? He started telling people I was into Hazel Parsons, and I only had eyes for Hazel, because Hazel had eyes for Jimmy. Now, I know that can't be true, because, you know, Hazel and Jimmy have been nothing but friends to me. And, it's friggin' foolish. Now, you know, it's especially foolish because I started dating Jane around the time that these rumors were coming out, so, you know, people knew it wasn't true. Jane's my wife now. The one I told you about. She works up at the plant. Now, Jimmy starts working up the plant that summer. Now, that's after Jimmy quits his bus job, of course. Now, I was working down there as well. This is before I started my grad, so I was there with Jimmy. And, you know, Jimmy was working up to be one of the best workers that Gar White ever hired. Now, the thing is, I don't know if the overnights were getting to him or anything, but the doctor up in Greenspan told him to get off the caffeine, and so he got off that. But he wouldn't get off the beer, though, even though the doctor told him to get off the beer as well. It's friggin' weird. Either way, I was last summer he worked there. I was saying, I gave him a little heart to hurt, right? I said, Jimmy, you gotta get off the beer. You know, I don't know if the plant is working for you here. The overtime, right? The overnights. And, you know, Jimmy didn't take too well to it. It's honest. But nonetheless, I started my garage, and, you know, I was trying to help him out. And Jimmy, you know, put him down, a couple odd jobs, no big deal. And, yeah, I'm not looking to spread gossip or anything, but I was helping Jimmy stay sober, right? When he was working out in the garage, he was staying sober down there. And so, you know, I started giving him an odd job or anything like that. And, you know, he was helping me out. He was actually pretty good at it. You know, he started helping me out, fixing up the garage and helping clean up when I didn't want to. And so I started slipping him a few bucks on the table. You know, not having to be taxed or anything like that. But I shouldn't be telling that though, boys, I should. Right, so Jimmy stops coming around for a long time. I don't think much of it. But then I find out that Jimmy started making the most awful rumors about me. I thought we had it all behind us with the whole Hazel situation and all that. And, you know, I was trying to help him out, right? So, I don't get it. And then I find out he starts trying to take work from me.
Sorry for my reaction. I had to move us to the living room. My daughter will finish cleaning up the coffee I spilled. It's just all these rumors are taking a toll on me. When I first started dating Francis in St. John's, Jimmy used to come over the weekends. Most of them. Him and Francis were such good friends, you know? Like sometimes there were like 3 of them, like the 3 Stooges, Francis, Patty, and Jimmy, all getting ready to head out to George Street on a Saturday night. Francis was the only one out of all of them that wasn't married at that age. So very often, I would be able to have girls' night with Hazel and Jane, you know, because they would come visit. It must have been so weird for them to be married so early, especially in Callit, because it's so small. The boys never really got to experience their youth and party and, you know, stuff like that. Imagine being married men on George Street. Anyway, Francis started getting concern calls from his parents. People in Cali were saying I was using Francis. And you know, I was really confused. I really liked Francis. I mean, I wouldn't call it love. I didn't love him, but I really liked him. And now I can officially say that I love my husband. But I was young back then. And you know, you have all seen 90 Day Fiancé, so you know the terrible things they were saying about me, and they didn't even know me. Once Francis finished his degree and I finished mine, we came back to Callit to live. I had to take a job out of Greenspun because there's no school here in Callit, and I didn't want my education degree to go to waste. I also didn't want to just be supported by Francis. I am very independent and I could never live the lifestyle of a housewife. So, when we moved back to Callit, Francis' family ended up falling in love with me. We got married the next summer we moved back here. I was very close with his family, especially his sister. And because of that bond that I made with Jane and Hazel while I was in St. John's, I was also very close with them. And, you know, Hazel's very artistic. And so some nights, while Francis was on the boats, we would meet over at her house and, you know, we would paint and have tea and chat for hours and hours. It was nice. And rumor has it that Jimmy started going around saying that I was, again, using my husband and that I was also making advances on him. He was telling everyone we had an affair. I never heard it from Jimmy, directly, obviously, but that's what Jane told me, that Patty heard from some of the boys that, you know, work at the plant where Jimmy used to go and help unload the boats. It's not true, though. I told you, I really love my husband. I love him.
Dad was a really good dad. for the most part. But he could never start a project without getting fully engrossed in it. He got carried away. Like, I'm sure you heard the rumors about why he was fired from the plant. Ugh, Gar loves to tell that story and give my dad a bad rep. But Dad was up there working, and Gar was the one filling his head with, "Oh, you're the best employee you've ever had, and there's a promotion in your future," and all that kind of stuff. So Dad took that and ran with it, of course. Started thinking, if I'm so good, why am I working for Gar? Why not just start a business of my own? Same thing. Sharon opens up a hair salon. Dad thinks he's a hairstylist. He starts fixing cars with Patty. Dad thinks he's a mechanic. But the thing he took too far was being a dad. I could not live my life. I don't know. Starting as early as grade 1, people would bully me in school, telling me my dad was a drunk, that he was the garbage man. Well, he'd clear the sides of the road for soda cans and exchange them for money. Call me Shih Tzu, because my dad had me on a leash. I couldn't say anything in class because they'd all start with, "That cracky barking up again?" Then the crowd up in Greenspawn started with it too. They don't really know my dad well up there, but, well, they get all the gossip from the crowd down here. It's literally like the Capulets and Montagues teamed up just to bully me. You know, 'cause Greenspawn and Callit Harbour hate each other. So, well, Dad was protective and everybody knew it. But when Jesse crowds started coming around, that's when it became too much. I don't know. He started getting angry with me, saying that I would be a teen mom and that Jesse was probably getting on with half the girls off the shore, or just he was going nowhere in life and that I was chasing him down that rabbit hole. I started spending every night driving around with Jesse. And the rumors started that I was only using it for his car. Not all. I couldn't spend time with Jesse. And I wanted to, but Dad was making that impossible. Look, I love my dad. When it was just me, Mom, and him, we'd sit and watch Survivor, have some junk food, and cheer on our favorites. It was fun. Those times were few and far between, with him always being drunk.
So, I'm sure if you were talking to anyone in town, you got all the gossip about Jimmy and what our relationship was like. I know, it got stressful sometimes. I married Jimmy because I loved him. When we used to date, before I moved down here to Callit, it was magical. When we used to go visit Francis in St. John's, we used to sneak off to a restaurant or movie together. I feel like there was this giant spark that just kept on burning. When we got married, it was like a fairy tale. We welcomed Vicky into the world, and Jimmy was one of the best fathers I've ever witnessed. But something happened. Jimmy started getting very protective over Vicky and then started claiming Frida wasn't in love with Francis. Then I started hearing gossip that Sharon, who was a good friend of mine, was flirting with Jimmy. I knew those rumors weren't true, but people were saying that Jimmy was saying it himself. Then I heard gossip about Frida and Jimmy having an affair. Again, I didn't believe it. Or at least I made myself believe that I didn't believe it. Frida wouldn't hurt me like that. That's why I stopped selling Avon. Going into the houses of other women and knowing they were judging me the whole time I sat there and waited for them to place an order, it became too much. Even though I really enjoyed handing out the little samples and discussing the products. I just enjoyed being a people person, and then it all changed. Jimmy wasn't malicious, though. I really don't understand why he always needed to be better than everyone else. I says it was the alcohol. He was drinking all the time. I would hide the beer, he'd go buy more. He always had a nice chunk of change in his pocket. He was constantly picking up cans and bottles. People in Callit are pigs, always littering. So I guess Jimmy was essentially helping the environment? But my new job in life became Jimmy's caretaker. And to an extent, it gave me a purpose. I started researching recipes, and I tell ya, I became one of the best cooks I knows. Jimmy loved the meals I made. Should have seen the belly he started to put on. I also got back into my art. I used to have art nights with the girls, but that slowly faded out. With me being home a lot more, I got the chance to start at it again. Jimmy made me happy, but I mean, some things could have been different. I do miss him, though.
Last time I saw Jimmy, let's see. Oh yeah, he was walking down across the neck. I passed him in my truck. That must have been a day or two ago now, but I mean, some petty theft. Do you consider that enough for me to want to murder him?
Last time I saw Jimmy must have been when I had to calm the storm between him and Frida. Like I said, he was going to fix Frida's car before Patty got there. Like, he had something to prove. That must have been, what, 2 days ago? The past little while I've been throwing out expired decaf, so yeah. Must have been 2 days ago. Here I am letting poor Aunt Myrtle work shifts at the Stop and Gas because I don't have the heart to tell her to retire. And you think I killed Jimmy Jenkins because a tab that he ran up. Yeah, no.
Oh no, the last time I saw Jimmy? He was walking up the road towards the plant. Must have been 2 days ago, maybe? I don't know. You might want to ask Gar about that. I saw him drive down the road about a half hour after, so we must have passed by Jimmy going up that way. But really, a little old woman like me who sits at her window all day long, you think I might have done something with Jimmy just because we had a falling out?
Haven't saw Jimmy in a while. I'd say ever since he stopped coming up here. You see, I never goes down around the point where he lives, and he never comes up around the neck where I runs my salon. Unless he's going to his mother's. Gossip around here says that he only goes up there when him and Hazel are at his throats. But I'd say the last time I heard from him was about 2 days ago when he called to make an appointment out of nowhere. But seriously, a little nonsense posted on Facebook, and you really think that's grounds for a woman like me to kill him?
Last time I saw Jimmy was 2 days ago. I went down to pick Vicky up, and he came out on the bridge and was yelling something about, "You hurts my little girl, you'll be wearing that Mustang up your..." Yeah, you know how he finished that sentence, and I don't want to repeat that in front of an officer. But really, that's my girlfriend's father. No matter how much I hate him, do you think I'd make away with him? Besides, Vicky was soon graduating and heading to university. We didn't have to deal with Jimmy much longer.
So, God, I'd say it was what, 2 or 3 days ago? Anyway, time flies by in a blur here. I went up to Frida's to tow her car. She said there was something wrong with the brakes. She just needed the sensor reset or anything like that. She said the light was flashing. But Jimmy was up there, ready to get under the car and help fix her brakes. Honestly, man thinks he's a great mechanic, but he's too drunk half the time to try and figure out what the hell's going on. Anyways, so you think I murdered Jimmy Jenkins because he tried to take work from me, even though no one in this town goes back to Jimmy for trying to get mechanic work. They always come to my garage.
Oh, Dios mío, ¿es en serio? The last time I saw Jimmy was like 2 days ago. I was going to go over to Greensboro to get some groceries. Francis was out in the boat, and I noticed my brake light was flashing on my dash. It's a brand new car, so I was freaking out and I called Patty to come check it out. Jimmy, as he's walking up the road, probably going across the neck, stops and thinks he's going to help me by crawling under my car. Patty showed up and got him to get on his way. Then he and Joe towed my car up to the garage. In a small town like this, gossips and rumors fly. But I love my family and I love my life here. Do you think I would risk all of this by killing Jimmy? Why, because of some rumors?
The last time I saw my dad was about 2 days ago. Jesse came to pick me up that morning, and when I got in the car with him, my dad was yelling something at him. I don't know what it is now. I tended to drown him out. But he didn't like Jesse, so it could have been anything. He's still my dad, though. You think I made away with my dad because he didn't like my boyfriend? There are plenty of in-laws that don't like their children's choice of spouse. That's not grounds for murder, though.
About 2 days ago, Jimmy was out on the bridge yelling something at Jesse Green, like he always do, when Jesse came to pick up Vicky. I see how happy Vicky is with Jesse, so when they pulled off and Jimmy came back in the house, I told him he had to lay off Jesse. One thing led to another, and we got into a bit of a tiff. Jimmy grabbed his coat and said he was walking up across the neck. I let him go. See, after you walk so far up across the neck, you come to Jimmy's parents' house. When he gets mad at me, he sometimes goes up there and stays the night. This time, I wasn't giving in, and I let him go, and I didn't even call his mother to see if he was up there. After not hearing from him for a day, I decided to call up, but she said he never came up that way. I got worried, and that's when his mother hung up the phone and called you guys. But I don't think a dysfunctional relationship is a reason to kill someone. There's plenty of dysfunction here in town, and we really only fought on the worst of days. What couple don't?